And I'm just going to rename these real quick. I'm going to sort alphabetically so that they're easier to find which of these you want to use. You'll notice there's this annotation at plus ID slash and then the actual name. And what that means is I'm going to be referencing this by ID, and the plus indicates if you don't have an ID of this name, generate it for me automatically. So I'm going to call this txt title or something. Don't matter. Where'd our button go? Put this down below it. And then we're going to call this one btn title, something like that. Because when we click this, we're going to modify this. And that's really all we need at this point, is the ID. And you could get fancy in there. You could set a background. You could set, styles. You could set padding, whatever. One thing to note as well is that you want to make sure that the interface that you're using is 8. You could switch this. The different API levels offer different styles of controls, and they offer different types of controls. So controls that are in, say, API 10 may not be available in earlier versions. So you'll see the styles over here of the spinner changed slightly. You've got these different buttons here. The progress indicators look a little bit different. So if we go back one from API 10 to API 8, they change. They look different, and they might behave a little different. You go back to 7 and they may or may not look different or behave differently. So we're just going to keep it at 8 since that's our target. And you'll notice that if you click down here, there are different types of text fields. Basically, these are masked edit controls for those that are familiar with those in Visual Studio. Different types of things here. Layouts. You have different layouts. Basically, a layout is how you define the interface. So by default, if you click down here, you have the graphical layout, which gives you the WYSIWYG interface, and then you could click on the XML, which is the source code behind this. So here you've got the text view that is in there. We renamed it to text title. You've got the button, which is in there by default as button title, and then you've got the relative layout. And what that means is that the controls that you drop onto the form are going to be relative either to the layout or to each other. And if you wanted to, you could switch that to be a linear layout, which would mean it's more like HTML, where the controls start at the top left, and as you go down, they stack on top of each other or next to each other, depending on how you define them. So I've had the most experience with linear layout. For this demo, relative layout works fine because it's more prone to this drag and drop kind of interface, so it's probably a little bit easier to use. And if you're not that picky about your interface, then that's fine. I happen to be real picky about how my layouts are put in, so we'll just leave it. So for now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to close this file, and we're going to go back to our project, and I'm going to open up some source code. So you double click on your source, and you see here that you've got your imports just like in C#, and you've got your class defined, and you'll see that it extends or implements activity, which is your base, and then you've got the onCreate, which is equivalent to the form load event. And then you've got the onCreate options menu, which is an event that's fired when it's creating the menus that you're going to be using on your interface. And you'll notice that if you hold your mouse over things, you get this cool little tooltip that pops up, which if you click on, gives you an interface that you can resize, you can click on things, you can do all kinds of things. So see, it says see also on start, so I could just click on that and it opens up this interface and says, hey, I'm going to show you the information about that. Or let's say set content view. Wonder why it's not showing up. It should. Let's see, activity. So I clicked on an object activity and it brought up all the information about that. And then here's that life cycle that I mentioned earlier. So when you first start up your application, the application starts the activity. You get the onCreate event, then the onStart event, then onResume, and then your activity is up and running and it's alive. People can interact with it. And then say you start up another activity or you start another form, then this activity goes into the background and the other one comes into the foreground, at which point you get the on pause. And then if somebody hits, say, the close button, they force your application to close, or your application goes back into the background and stays there for a while and the operating system says, I don't need you anymore, I'm going to destroy you to save memory, then your application gets killed. And if the user then says, oh, hey, I want to pull back that application and take another look at it, then it goes back into this life cycle and says, okay, I'm going to start over, onCreate, onStart, onResume, and there it is. If the user just pauses, maybe they turn off the interface or they take a phone call, it'll go into pause, and then when they resume, it'll go back here, kick off the onResume event, and back into the running state. And then if the application is closed out, you get this on destroy, and then the application shuts down. So keep in mind that this is a good diagram that explains the basics of how this stuff works, but keep in mind that there are a lot more events that are fired. This is not all of them, which is why I have this. Where was that? There it is. This Android Android activity events. So basically what I did is I wrote this little application here, and these are listed in the URLs down here, Android activity events. So basically what I did is I wrote this application that it basically hooked into every single event that could fire, and then I did different things, like I started up the application, it fired this event, then it fired that one, then that one, then that one, then that one, then that one, and so on. And these are the parameters that were passed back from each event. So as you can see, here are the main ones, onCreate, onStart, onResume, which are in this little diagram that we saw a second ago. And this diagram, I actually made a copy of it, and it's available out there. Life cycle. So that is available as well here. So as you can see, the main events that I highlighted in yellow show up here, onCreate, onStart, onResume, and that's great, but there's a lot of other things that happen in between when different things are going on that you may or may not be aware of. So it's important to research which one of these events you need to hook in for what you're trying to do. I won't go into too many details about that. But take a look at this. You can see when I pressed hardware buttons, it actually fires the on key down and on key up events, gives you the key code, the action, and so forth. So if you want to get more familiar about different events and when they're firing and what they're doing, then that may help. It helped me kind of get up to speed as well.